On Tuesday, June 6th, Tucker Carlson delivered on his promise to bring his new content to Twitter. He dropped episode 1 of his new series on the platform. We're going to play a preview in just a second. I will just note, however, he chose June 6th to drop this episode, which happens to be the 29-month anniversary of the January 6th riot. What do you think about that? Seems a little suspicious. Seems like he was sending a signal, right? What are the odds? What are the odds of that? What are the odds of that? All right, here's episode 1.
What I've always said, man. Dig through Tucker's hair. You're gonna find the mark.
Yeah, you'll find the mark. Find the mark. All right, here we go. Episode 1, new Tucker Carlson show. This is a little preview.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. This morning it looks like somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down. So if this was intentional, it was not a military tactic, it was an act of terrorism. The question is, who did it? Well, let's see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by the Russian government. It currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. The dam's reservoir supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it. In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian natural gas pipeline, last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media, which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure.
All right. So that's a minute 40 seconds worth. The whole episode is a little over 10 minutes. Lot to look into there. First of all, I think it is telling that Tucker, in his first episode back, decided not to lean into the hottest culture war topic of the day, but to talk about current events in Ukraine. I also think, in that little minute 40-second segment there, it was meta in the sense that he really took aim at cable news, right? He took aim at his old medium, right. Called it out for being the sort of like superficial blue pill version of the news that it is. And he goes on in that segment, as we mentioned earlier in the show, to talk about the UFOs and how is this not on, the top of people's radar? Or how is the news not covering this? He goes on to really combine this sort of debunking of the mainstream, media's, overarching Ukraine narrative, which exists, obviously throughout CNN and MSNBC, but setting aside his show, most of Fox News is on board with that also. So he sort of integrated that into a critique of cable news, right? Of his old sort of stomping ground. And so it was an interesting episode 1. And it did phenomenally well. The tweet with the video on it currently has over 100 million views.
Right. Now he's dropped a second one, which is really telling Fox News to go fuck themselves. Because apparently they sent a letter to his lawyers immediately after that dropped, claiming he was in breach of contract. Am I jumping on an exhibit? Am I stepping on an exhibit?
No, I got it right here. I will just pull it up. There's no problem. Keep talking.
Okay.
This is it. This is the story, as Russell said. They're saying he breached his contract, and Tucker's lawyers, in response, said, here, Fox defends its very existence on freedom of speech grounds. Now they want to take Tucker Carlson's right to speak freely away from him because he took to social media to share his thoughts on current events. So what that speaks to is the fact that, Tucker calls this episode 1 of his new show, which, he has a right to brand it how he wants.
Right.
It's basically Tucker talking into the camera and posting it on his social media. I mean, you can call that a show, I guess. But at this point, he hasn't even monetized it in any way. It's not like there's ads playing on that, or anything like that.
Right. And they're arguing, and I think it's a strong case, that that's a freedom of speech issue, that he's a private citizen giving his opinion on current events. The contract doesn't cover that. If he went on CNN, then he'd be in breach of contract. Based on the terms that are included in that article, that he can't basically that he can't do a show in any medium, any electronic medium, streaming medium that exists or that may be invented. I thought that was an interesting clause. They're kind of predicting generative AI there.
Right.
But you can't. He's got his Swanson dinner money.
That's the thing. Tucker Carlson is, as far as we know, at least, not making any money off of this new show. He doesn't need the money. He's never needed the money. He was born rich, so he's never needed the money. Not only was he born rich, he's made a fucking fortune off of the Daily Caller and his Fox News gigs, and God knows how much he makes for speaking engagements. I mean, the guy's drowning in money. The guy does not need money.
No, look.
So he's not doing this for the money, and he's, as far as we know, he's not making anything. He's posting to his social media. He's making videos that he's posting on. I mean, you can't sue somebody for doing that. That's a breach of contract.
Well, Tucker claims that I think he says it's a Fox executive told him that they're trying to keep him off the air through 2025. In other words, through after the election, which I believe, because this is the establishment's worst fucking nightmare. A guy who has enough money that he doesn't have to worry about consequences. A guy who's completely independently wealthy, doesn't need to ever work again, doesn't have to worry about what bridges he burns, on a platform owned by a guy with a similar mindset and similar stats and a similar position, who has committed himself to basically telling the entire establishment to go fuck themselves. I'm gonna platform people like this, and there's nothing you could do about it. This is a DEFCON 5 situation for the establishment. The idea that Tucker's just going to be out there during the election season with no network, no controls. That's why I said when they fired him, he's much more dangerous now than he was yesterday.
Right. Of course. Because now you're on a platform where you don't have to placate. Not only can you say what you want in terms of like there not being any censorship, right? You can curse, you can cover whatever topics you want, right? I mean, I as erratic as Elon has been, I doubt Elon Musk has the balls to penalize Tucker Carlson, for any content. Right?
How many views did this get?
Over 100 million. Yeah.
Yeah, what does CNN get on an average show? 500,000
Yeah,
people?
a few 100,000. Yeah, a lot of their shows don't even crack 1 million. Right. So just blowing the competition out of the water, not even close. And not only do you have to now worry about censorship, but you also don't have to worry about the priorities of the corporate entity that you're working for. I'm sure there are a lot of topics that Tucker covered on Fox that he only covered because it was Fox, and you have to throw some red meat to the chuds, you know what I mean? Because it's showbiz, right? It's the old Hollywood system. You do one movie for me, one for the system, right? You make your art house movie, then you do the big. Yes, probably same thing. Half the segments he did were probably segments that he would have probably rather not done, but all right, whatever. You got to keep Fox happy. Now,
should you really hire a drag queen for your 6-year-old's birthday party?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Is it wrong to wonder about
wrong?
That? Yeah. Yeah. Am I crazy?
I don't think most people in America think so.
Yeah. Joe Biden thinks so, apparently. So I mean, now he can not only is he not hamstrung by the censorship that comes with being on a cable news show, he can curate his own content now. He decides what to cover and what not to cover.
Right.
in a way that he couldn't have had full control over that over at Fox.
And the kind of person he is, it always seemed like he was particularly fascinated by this question of the military industrial complex and the way it interacts with the media, which obviously there was only so far that he could push that while he was at Fox. And now this is their worst nightmare. An independently wealthy guy with a platform being run by an independently wealthy guy.
Right, exactly.
Committed to not pulling him off.
Please clap.